The day my partner died, I stood in the hospital hallway, clutching our 6-month-old twins, Lucas and Mia, while the world seemed to fade into silence. I expected my family to rush in, to offer support, but instead I was met with cold shoulders and doors quietly closing. My parents told me they were too old to help. His parents murmured that with his passing, there was no connection left. My sister avoided my gaze, her silence cutting deeper than the loss itself. At 28, I was a widow, with 2 tiny lives depending on me, and no one around to lean on. Just as I felt despair swallowing me whole, headlights pierced the night outside my rundown apartment. A sleek black car came to a stop, and from it emerged my grandfather, Samuel Whitaker, the wealthy figure my family despised. He looked at me and said, "Come with me, Grace." I remember the stillness of the church after his funeral. People offered polite words, but no one stayed long. Lucas whimpered in his stroller, and Mia kicked and fidgeted. I stood alone by the coffin, feeling like I was disappearing into nothingness. When the service ended, I searched for my parents. "Could you come by tonight?" "I can't handle this on my own," I asked, my voice trembling. My mother pressed her lips together. "Grace, your father and I are too old. You're young. You'll manage." "Too old?" I choked out. "They're your grandchildren." She turned away. My father only said, "You made your choices. Deal with them." Then they walked out without even looking at the twins. Later that week, I reached out to his parents. His father, Charles, barely cracked the door. "Without him, there's nothing left to hold on to. We've got our own problems," he muttered. I held Mia tighter. "Your son is gone, and these babies are all that's left of him. Don't you care?" Charles avoided my gaze. "I can't take on more." The door shut with a final thud. By day 3, I stopped calling anyone. My sister left a voicemail. "Grace, I can't deal with crying babies right now. Call me when things calm down." Calm down? My partner was gone. My children needed feeding and care. I hadn't slept in days. My apartment reeked of sour milk and damp clothes. That evening, both twins cried at once, sharp, painful wails that tore through me. I collapsed to the floor, holding them close, sobbing into their tiny heads. "It's just us now," I whispered. "Just us 3. The phone rang, and for a brief moment, hope flickered. Maybe someone cared. It was my sister again. "Grace, you need to toughen up. You can't expect others to drop everything for you," I snapped. "I buried my partner 2 days ago. Don't lecture me about tough." I begged you, begged Mom, begged Dad. Everyone turned away. "Do you know what that feels like?" There was silence, followed by a sigh. "I'm sorry, but I can't help." The line went dead. The room felt colder. The twins cried harder. I pressed my back against the wall, shaking. That was when I knew. I had been truly abandoned. Outside, thunder rumbled. I stared out the cracked window, watching rain streak down the glass. In that darkness, I whispered to my partner, "I don't know how to do this without you." What I didn't know then was that the answer was already on its way, through the very man no one expected to step forward. The storm raged outside, the twins' cries echoing in the small apartment. I paced, holding Mia in my arms when a knock sounded at the door. My heart leaped. No one visited anymore. I hesitated. Another knock, more insistent this time. I pulled the door open and froze. There he was, tall despite his years. Silver hair slicked back, eyes sharp as steel, yet warm with something I hadn't seen in weeks. Care. My grandfather, Samuel Whitaker, stood in the rain, holding an umbrella in one hand and a briefcase in the other. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice breaking. He stepped inside, closing the storm out behind him. His eyes swept over the mess, the empty bottles, the twins crying in their crib. He set down the umbrella and walked toward me. "Grace," he said firmly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You and these children are coming with me tonight." I shook my head in disbelief. "Why? After all these years, they all despise you. Mom, Dad, they called you heartless, cold. Why are you here?" He crouched beside the crib, gently stroking Mia's tiny hand. His voice softened. "I buried my wife when your father was just a baby. I know the darkness you're in. And because you're my family, that's enough for me." Tears filled my eyes. "I can't leave. This is my home." Grandpa's eyes locked onto mine. "This is not a home. It's a prison of grief. I won't let my granddaughter and great-grandchildren rot here. Pack what you need." "But Grandpa, I don't want to be a burden." He chuckled, but it was tinged with sadness. "Grace, I own 5 houses and several companies. You think 2 babies and a grieving widow are a burden? No, you're my family, and that's what matters. For the first time in days, something inside me cracked. Not from despair, but from hope. What if they hate me for accepting your help? He straightened, his presence filling the room. Let them hate. When the world turns its back, you don't beg at closed doors. You walk through the one still open. And my door, Grace, will never close on you. I covered my mouth, sobbing. I don't even know what to bring. Bring the children, he said simply. The rest doesn't matter. Within an hour, the twins and I were in his sleek black car. As we sped through the city, the lights blurring by, Mia finally slept on my chest, and Lucas's tiny hand gripped my finger. I leaned back against the leather seat, my chest rising for the first time without the crushing weight of despair. Grandpa glanced over at me, his eyes filled with quiet resolve. Grandpa glanced at me through the rearview mirror. From tonight on, you're not alone. Understand? I nodded, holding my children tighter. I understand, and I'll never forget this. The storm faded as we approached towering gates. Beyond them, a grand estate bathed in warm light awaited us, its doors open and welcoming as the gates closed behind us. I stepped out of the car, feeling as though I had entered a different world. The mansion loomed above, its windows glowing softly, a stark contrast to the fading storm outside. Inside, a butler named Richard and a housekeeper named Lily greeted us. They offered us tea, and almost miraculously, a nursery had been prepared. 2 cribs stood side by side, soft blankets folded neatly, and shelves stocked with formula and diapers. I stood stunned. How is this possible? Grandpa, with a small smile, answered, I made a few calls. When I said you were coming home, I meant tonight. I sat in a rocking chair watching Lucas and Mia finally fall into a peaceful sleep, their tiny forms still for the first time in weeks. For the first time since the loss, I allowed my body to relax. The next morning, sunlight streamed through tall windows. I hesitated, half afraid that everything from the night before had been a dream. But there at the head of the table was Grandpa, reading the paper, a plate of eggs and toast set before me. Sit, Grace, he said without looking up. Eat. You'll need strength. I slid into the chair, feeling like a child once again. I don't know how to thank you. Don't, he replied flatly. Then he folded the paper, his gaze sharp. Instead, promise me you'll learn. Learn what? I asked, confused. How to stand on your own 2 feet. Not just survive, Grace. Survive is what you've been doing back in that old apartment. Here you'll grow. For your children and for yourself. My fork clattered against the plate. Grandpa, I don't have a degree in business. I don't even know where to start. You'll start at the beginning with me, he said, leaning back, folding his arms. You're a Whitaker, whether they like it or not. I built my empire from nothing but grit and scribbled numbers. You'll sit in on meetings. You'll read reports. You'll ask questions until it makes sense. And when you fail, because you will fail, you'll get back up. His words carried weight, but there was something else beneath them. Belief. That week, Grandpa took me into the heart of his business. I sat quietly in conference rooms, clutching Mia's diaper bag, while executives in sharp suits spoke in terms I barely understood. When I seemed overwhelmed, Grandpa would tap his pen on the table, a quiet signal. Pay attention. You belong here. At night, while the twins slept, he'd sit across from me in the study. Balance sheet, he'd say, sliding a stack of papers toward me. Tell me what you see. I see numbers that don't make sense, I admitted. Then keep looking until they do, he urged. It was exhausting. Balancing motherhood and business lessons, but little by little, I began to recognize patterns, revenue, expenses, strategy. Words that once intimidated me now felt like tools I could master. There were times I doubted myself. One evening, I whispered, Grandpa, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should just stay small. He leaned forward, his voice firm but gentle. Grace, you buried your partner, raised twins alone, and faced a world that turned away from you. Don't you dare tell me you're small. Tears welled up in my eyes. From the nursery, I heard Olivia's laughter, followed by Mason's babbling. I looked toward the sound, and for the first time, I didn't just hear need. I heard possibility. That was when I realized Grandpa wasn't just giving me a roof. He was giving me a chance to rebuild. Not out of pity, but with purpose. By the time the twins turned 1, I could read a profit and loss statement without feeling overwhelmed. I still felt like an imposter in the boardroom, but Grandpa never let me shrink into the background. Grace, speak, he'd order whenever I hesitated. But what if I'm wrong? I whispered one day. Then you'll be wrong loudly. And you'll learn twice as fast. That was his way. No softness in his lessons. Except when it came to tucking the twins into bed each night. One of those late nights. While I watched Olivia gnaw on a teething ring, an idea struck me. When Ethan was sick, I had struggled to find safe, affordable baby products. What if other mothers had the same problem? What if I could create something better? I sketched a rough plan for organic baby lotion, diapers free from harsh chemicals, and bottles designed for colicky infants. I called it Little Haven. When I nervously shared my idea with Grandpa, I braced for criticism. Instead, his eyes lit up. Now that, he said, tapping the table, isn't just surviving. That's building. Do it. A week later, I sat across from a supplier, my hands trembling beneath the conference table. The man, Mr. Kent, leaned back with a smirk. You're very young, Mrs. Whitaker, he said. And frankly, you don't look like someone who knows how to run a business. Why should I trust you with my inventory? My cheeks burned. Part of me wanted to shrink away, but then I heard Grandpa's voice in my head. Speak. Even if you're wrong, speak. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. Because I've already survived the worst, I said steadily. I buried my partner. I raised twins when everyone abandoned me. I'm still here. If I can do that, I can run a company. And if you don't work with me, someone else will. And they'll get the profit you passed up. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Kent's smirk faltered. You've got some fire. I'll give you that. Fine. I'll take a small order. It was enough to start. Orders began to trickle in, slow at first. A spilled drink ruined my laptop one afternoon, but the sales kept coming. Mothers left reviews. Finally, products I can trust. Photos of smiling babies in our diapers filled the website. Each order reminded me I wasn't just a widow scrambling anymore. I was building something real. One evening, I burst into Grandpa's study, waving my phone. We hit our first 1,000 orders, I cried. He closed his book and gave the smallest smile. Congratulations, Grace, now do it 10,000 more times. I laughed through tears. You never let me enjoy the moment. Enjoy it, he replied. Then get back to work. Growth doesn't wait. Back in the nursery, Mia reached out her hand and Lucas babbled, Mama. I realized this wasn't just business. It was the first spark of a life I was creating, for them and for me. Sparks, if fed, can grow into fire. Little Haven grew faster than I ever imagined. By the twins' 3rd birthday, our products filled shelves across the state. Reporters wanted interviews, magazines requested photo shoots. Suddenly, the same people who once ignored me spoke my name with admiration. That's when the phone calls began. The first was from my mother. Her voice dripped with sweetness I hadn't heard since childhood. Grace, darling, I read about you. I miss you and the little ones. Bring them by, it's been too long. My hands shook around the phone. This was the same woman who had turned me away at my lowest. Mom, when I begged for help, you closed the door, I said flatly. She gave a nervous laugh. Oh, sweetheart, we were grieving too. Surely you understand. I looked at Lucas and Mia playing on the rug, clapping and giggling. They had deserved her love then, not now. I'll think about it, I answered coldly and hung up. A week later, a letter arrived in a gold-embossed envelope. It was from Charles, my father-in-law. We may have had misunderstandings, but family is family. Perhaps we should combine your company with our resources. Together we'd be unstoppable. My stomach turned. Misunderstandings? He had shut me out when I stood on his doorstep holding a sick baby. Now that I was successful, he wanted to merge. That night, I raged in Grandpa's study. They all want something now, I spat. Where were they when the twins were hungry? When I had nothing? Grandpa swirled his glass of whiskey, eyes sharp. And do you know why they've come crawling back? Because they're hypocrites, I muttered. Because success changes the way parasites see you, he said evenly. When you were weak, you were worthless. Now that you're strong, you're valuable. Don't mistake their greed for love. His words cut deep but cleared the fog. That weekend, my sister arrived at the gates in a designer coat, holding a gift box. Grace! She squealed, arms wide. Look at you living in this palace. I'm so proud of you. Proud? I shot back. You ignored me for months. She shifted, uneasy. We all make mistakes. I brought something for the kids. Can I come in? Before I could answer, Grandpa appeared beside me, his presence towering. Family doesn't abandon its own, then knock when fortune arrives. Go home, Her face drained of color. "You can't keep her from us forever," she hissed. I stepped forward, trembling, but steady. "No, Sarah, he's not keeping me. You lost me the moment you turned away." She blinked, stunned, before storming off. I leaned against the iron gate, shaking. Grandpa placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're learning," he said softly. "Love is proven in the dark, not in the light." But whispers of envy were already circling, building toward something I could no longer ignore. It was a Saturday when the storm finally broke. Lucas and Mia were finger painting in the sunroom while I helped Lily in the kitchen. Suddenly, Richard rushed in, pale. "Miss Grace, there's a crowd at the gate. Your parents, your sister, and Charles. They demand to see you." My chest tightened. "And?" "They've brought papers. Legal ones, it seems." Grandpa entered, his cane tapping against the marble. He didn't look surprised. "It was only a matter of time. Let them in. But remember, Grace, this fight is yours." Minutes later, the grand foyer filled with the very people who had once abandoned me. My mother's perfume hit first, sharp and artificial. My father's polished suit gleamed. Sarah clutched her handbag as if it could shield her shame. Charles carried a leather folder thick with documents. "Grace," my mother sang, "look at this house." "You've done so well," I folded my arms. "What do you want?" Charles stepped forward and slammed the folder on the table. "Rights. As his father, I have claims over Ethan's share of this empire. And you, as his widow, have a duty to share with his bloodline." I laughed bitterly. "Claims duty? When I begged you for formula for Lucas, you shut the door in my face. That was your duty, Charles. And you failed. Failed?" "No, I won." My voice shook but held. Charles's jaw tightened. "That was the past. Business is business. Business?" My words cracked. "These are children, not assets. My life is not a transaction." My father, Curtis, raised a hand. "Grace, calm down. We're family. Let's not make this ugly. If you bring us in, we can all benefit. Think of your children's future." Lucas peeked down from the staircase, wide-eyed. Mia clung to my leg. My blood boiled. "Their future? You mean your pockets." "Don't pretend this is about them," Sarah snapped, her voice high-pitched. "You're selfish, Grace. We all struggled, too. Now that you've made it, you shut us out. We're entitled to a share," I spun on her. "Entitled?" "When my partner's body was still warm, I begged you to sit with me. You said you couldn't handle crying babies. Now you want part of the success you never touched?" "No." Her face faltered, but Curtis stepped closer, his voice low, threatening. "This arrogance won't end well. Without your grandfather, you wouldn't have survived. None of this is really yours." The words cut deep. For a moment, doubt flickered. Was I just living under Grandpa's shadow? Then Lucas's tiny hand slipped into mine, Mia pressed against my side, and I saw Samuel standing silently nearby, his eyes urging me to rise. I straightened. "You're right. Without Grandpa, I wouldn't have made it. He opened his door when you slammed yours. He gave me a chance when you gave me nothing. But every sleepless night, every tear, every risk, that's mine, not yours. And you'll never touch it." Charles slammed his fist against the table. "We'll take this to court." "Do it," I snapped. "I have every contract, every receipt, every review proving Little Haven is mine. Go ahead. Show the world how low you'll sink trying to steal from a widow and her children." Sarah's face twisted. "Ungrateful brat. We're blood." Tears streamed down my face as I laughed bitterly. Blood abandoned me when I needed it most. Family isn't who shares your veins. It's who stays when the world collapses. "You are not my family." Silence fell. Charles gathered the papers with shaking hands, fury coloring his face. Curtis muttered, "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back." Sarah's eyes shone with bitter tears. "You'll see what it feels like to be alone." I lifted my chin, though my body trembled. I already know what it feels like to be alone. And I survived. "You can't hurt me anymore." At last, Grandpa stepped forward, his cane striking the marble like a gavel. His voice was calm but final. "You heard her. Leave my house. Don't come back." The heavy doors opened. One by one, they filed out, faces pale, masks shattered. When the last echo faded, I collapsed onto the stairs, shaking. Mia climbed into my lap. "Mommy, are they gone?" "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered, clutching her close. "They're gone. And they won't return." Samuel rested a hand on my shoulder. "You fought well tonight." I was terrified, I admitted, wiping my eyes. He gave a rare, proud smile. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to stand anyway. And tonight you stood taller than I ever have. As the doors shut against the storm, I realized they hadn't just tried to take my company, they'd tried to take my dignity. And I had slammed the door, not only on them, but on the part of me that once begged for their love. After that night, something inside me shifted. I no longer felt like the abandoned widow desperate for scraps. I was Grace Whitaker, mother, entrepreneur, survivor. And soon the world began to see me that way too. Little Haven expanded beyond the state. Orders poured in nationwide. Retailers lined up. Investors called, but I remembered Grandpa's warning, never sell your soul for quick profit. Build slow, build strong. One morning, the local paper ran a headline. Widow builds baby empire, a story of grit and grace. The photo showed me with Lucas and Mia, smiling proudly with a bottle of our lotion. When I showed the paper to Grandpa, he chuckled. Grace, grit, empire. Sounds like you, I laughed, shaking my head. I never wanted the spotlight. You didn't want it, he said. But you earned it. Weeks later, we were invited to a conference in New York. Entrepreneurs shared their journeys. I stood on stage, lights blinding, Lucas and Mia waving from the front row beside Grandpa. My voice trembled, then grew stronger. When my partner died, I thought my life ended too. Everyone I trusted turned away. But one man opened his door, my grandfather. With his belief, I built something from nothing. Not just a business, but a life for my children. The crowd rose in applause. I spotted tears in Grandpa's eyes, something I'd never seen before. That night, in the quiet of a hotel suite, I turned to him. Grandpa, I want to create something bigger, a foundation in Ethan's name. His brows lifted. For him? Yes, for every child who loses a parent too soon. For every widow left with nothing. I want his name to live on in the hope we give others. He gripped my hands, voice steady. That's the best business plan you've ever had. 6 months later, we launched the Ethan Whitaker Foundation. Its mission was simple: provide financial aid, housing, and counseling for single parents. On opening night, I stood on stage with Lucas and Mia, cutting the ribbon as cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions, but my eyes were only on the twins, their faces glowing with pride. Afterward, Lucas tugged at my dress. Mommy, is Daddy proud of us? My throat tightened. I knelt, cupping his face. Yes, sweetheart. Daddy is smiling from heaven right now. Mia slipped her hand into mine. And Grandpa, too. I looked at Samuel, standing tall despite his age, pride shining in his eyes. Especially Grandpa. Later that evening, he pulled me aside. Grace, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I've built fortunes, companies, empires, but tonight you built something greater, a legacy. Now I know the family name is safe in your hands. Tears filled my eyes. Grandpa, I couldn't have done any of this without you. He shook his head gently. No, Grace, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. And for the first time, I truly believed him. Years passed, and the mansion no longer felt overwhelming. It felt like home. Mia and Lucas were 12 now, bright, spirited, and carrying the same determination that once kept me going through sleepless nights. One golden autumn afternoon, I told them, "We're going to see your father today." They grew quiet, nodding solemnly. We loaded into the car, holding a bouquet of Ethan's favorite white lilies. Samuel, now older and slower, insisted on joining us. The cemetery lay beneath a canopy of oaks, the air crisp, the ground scattered with fallen leaves. I knelt at Ethan's grave, tracing the letters carved into the stone. Ethan Coleman, beloved husband and father. Lucas placed the flowers gently. Hi, Dad, he whispered. Mia crouched beside him, her voice trembling. We're doing okay. Mom made sure of it. My heart clenched and I swallowed hard. Ethan, I wish you could see them now. They're strong, brave, everything we dreamed they'd be. Behind me, Samuel's cane tapped the earth. And she's stronger than even you believed she could be, he added softly. I looked up at him. His silver hair gleamed in the sun, his face lined with age, but his eyes were steady as ever. Grandpa, I said, tears swelling. I don't know how to thank you for saving us, for saving me. He shook his head. You already have. By becoming the woman you are. By raising those children into lions, not lambs. Mia slipped her hand into mine. Mom, she asked, her eyes wide. What's family really? Is it just people who share our blood? I took a deep breath, the wind rustling the leaves around us. No, sweetheart. Family is who stays when the world turns its back. Family is who fights for you, believes in you, and never lets go. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. Lucas leaned against me, nodding slowly as if memorizing my words. So Daddy's still family even if he's not here? I kissed his forehead. Always. He's here in us, in everything we do. We stood together in silence. The children held my hands, and Samuel stood behind us like a sentinel, guarding the family he had saved from the ashes. As the sun dipped low, casting long golden shadows across the cemetery, I felt an overwhelming peace. I remembered the night I whispered in despair, "I don't know if I can do this without you." Ethan. Now, standing here with my children and my grandfather beside me, I finally had my answer. I did, and I would keep doing it. For them, for Samuel, for Ethan's memory. As we walked back to the car, Lucas tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, will we always be okay?" I smiled through my tears, squeezing both their hands. "Yes, darling, because we have each other, and that's more than enough." Samuel paused at the gates, looking back at Ethan's grave, then at us. His voice, steady and proud, carried across the quiet air. "The Whitaker family stands not because of wealth, but because of love." Never forget that, and in that moment, under the autumn sky, I knew the circle was complete. That was my story. And even now, a part of me is still living in that moment. If you've ever been through something like this, or even if you haven't, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done. And if this story meant something to you, go ahead and subscribe. You never know. The next story might change how you see the world.